So it's great that the query generation function already generated some interest and some questions. I would like to go a bit deeper into that. So the general question here is, of course, when we do a study, which queries should we use? Because, well, we have to decide based on some assumptions how we use the queries. So this is the basic question, which queries should we use in our research? And if we look at it from, say, a non-software perspective, first of all, maybe the best thing would be if we had access to Google's query logs or any other search engine's query logs. So this would give us the advantage that we would have all the queries from that search engine. So a complete set of every query that is entered into that search engine within a specific time span, of course. And we would also have information on the query volume. Because what we see in search queries is that we have some that are super popular and all the long tail queries, very unpopular queries, even queries. Google always says they have queries that are entered today that they've never seen before. So still new queries coming up after 30 years of operation, over 25 years of operation. The problem, though, is that we nearly have no availability of search engine logs for research. One of the reasons, well, the older among us may remember, is the AOL debacle in 2006. They released the query log, and some journalists found, well, personal information in that query log, like credit card numbers and so on, people planning to kill their spouse and so on, whatever you can imagine. And after that, of course, the whole team at AOL was fired, but also no search engine offered query logs anymore to any researcher. So we have some corporations, mainly in the area of information retrieval, so nothing, well, that can hurt the search engine providers, where they have corporations for particular projects, but no open data in that sense. So what we or researchers in the field usually do is they more or less handpick queries. Sometimes with the help of tools like Google Trends, but most of the time, well, they just decide what queries to use. This usually results in a low number of queries, of course, and it is unclear whether users actually search for these queries. So for instance, I saw a study that was published some years ago. They used the names of political parties, and of course they used the name of the German Green Party, Bündnis 90 Die Grünen. But nobody types that into a search engine, of course. Why would you type that in if everybody says just Die Grünen instead of the full name? So that might be a problem, that we assume that people will search for the queries that we decide to use in our studies, but in reality, they may not use these queries or may not use these queries to the extent that we presume. So a problem here is we don't have any information on the query volume, and that would be a good addition. So some examples from prior studies. So what we can do when we do a study, well, we can just use a single query, and that's perfectly fine. I think the first one was by Judith Bar-Ilan in 2006, and she investigated some search engines, how they respond to the query Jew. And that's a good study, of course. And we still see studies today that use a single query, sometimes the same query in different languages, but you can do that. The more kind of problematic way to generate queries is when we generate a query set. So we maybe brainstorm what we want to investigate. We have a certain topic and we collect queries that are related to that topic. So here's an example from a quite recent study that was focused on the US primaries in 2020. And they just said, well, we use the term US elections and then the names of the three candidates who were still running for the presidency in the US. So it was Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders. And we could call something like this a finite set of queries, especially when we only consider the names. So for instance, we did something like that as well for the German federal election. There's a list of all the candidates, the official list. We used that, and we used all these 4,000 names or what it was. So this is a complete finite query set. It becomes more problematic when we use something like US elections, because there are many ways people may formulate questions related to the elections, not necessarily only US elections. And the third option, of course, and this is an example from a study where the author Ian Ruthven used the AOL query set. As said, the AOL query set is from, log file is from 2006, and he used it in 2012 when it was already quite stale, and you can imagine you can't use the data anymore. So he was interested in queries about grief and bereavement, and he extracted everything related to that from the log file and generated more than 600 queries from that. So you can see that the number of queries increases. We try to depict the different ways of generating queries. I don't want to go into the details, just to show the two dimensions. So does it take into account the popularity of the request, and does it allow the coverage of a specific topic? And at the bottom left, you have the search queries that are just invented by the researchers, so where we assume, well, these are queries that people search for. And on the top right, you have the ideal, which is you have all the search queries, including the search volume from all the search engines. So that would be the best possible. And we have many ways in between. But of course, as I said in the earlier talk, when researchers approach us, everybody wants to have the Google queries. And we thought about that. So what can we do about it? So our idea is that we connect to Google's keyword planner database to generate queries. So we define a list of initial queries. This can be just one query or a set of queries. And then we extend this list by suggested terms from Google's keyword planner. I will talk about the limitations at the end of this talk, but for now, the idea is, well, Google serves advertisers, and of course they want advertisers to buy a lot of ads. Ads are always based on keywords, and usually the advertisers don't know much about the field and what people are actually searching for. So if you have something like, well, I want to sell my washing machines, I have the query washing machine, they will extend it by what people actually search for in the topical field of washing machines. Not necessarily including washing machine in the key phrase, but extending it to queries in the field. So what we can do with the query sampler, and on the screenshots here you can see kind of our internal standalone version. This is not the version implemented in Red, but it's very similar. So we select a keyword, and we can say we want this in a particular language and a particular region. So for instance, we can use the same language and compare the keyword in Germany in German and in Austria in German as well. So in the example shown on the slide, you can see I built a keyword set of just 3 queries, rat, cat, and mouse, and the system generated more than 300 suggested queries for me. The question, of course, is, well, can we use these queries without first looking at them? No, of course not. So we have to do some cleaning of the data before we can use it. So what the system does in that case, and this is also what is implemented in Red, is that you generate a list of expanded keywords, and then you can just download it for further processing. So this is what was generated for the rat, cat, mouse set. So you can see a lot of queries, and well, I don't want to read them all, of course, but just some observations on that. So first of all, of course, we have a lot of queries, including the keyword that we used. But we also have some where we have kind of a synonym, a near synonym, like kittens for cat, but also related to cats. And here you can see, well, it's an advertising tool, of course, scratching post. So they detected that people who search for cats also search for scratching posts. So this is something where you can place an ad for cat lovers. So we have to be careful with these lists, but still they generate a lot of good suggestions that we can use for our studies. The downside, of course, is that we don't know the exact procedure how Google generates these suggestions. So I would be, well, careful with that. So oftentimes the problem is not that we have, well, not enough queries. The problem often is that, well, we generate too many queries. And especially if we talk about studies where we want to have jurors judging the results, evaluating the results. I mean, we once did a study where we had 1,000 queries and 30 results per query, and it's 1,000 jurors. You can do that, but you need the money to pay them, of course. So first of all, when we look at the generated queries, some, of course, are simply not relevant, so we need to clean the data. But also, if the queries are relevant, well, maybe we don't want to use them all. So the idea is that we just use a sample of the keywords that were generated, and this can already improve the evidential value of the studies. Because now we have queries that users actually enter, and we also know how often these queries are entered. So this gives us a better founded decision on which keywords to use in the study, and as I said, we also have the search volume. I want to illustrate that with an example. So here I focus just on the keyword red. The search, the system gives us 208 different keywords with a total search volume, which is the average search volume in Google for that particular locale. So in this case, it's Germany. No, it was UK, I think. Anyway, so per month, around 360,000 times one of these queries is entered. So we have popular and unpopular queries in that set as well. So in the table, you just see the 10 most popular queries generated by the tool. So we have the original query, which is red, which has the highest search volume. And in the table, you can see the average monthly searches. You can see the cumulative search volume. So for position 3, it's for the first 3 queries. And you can also see if you just use the first 3 queries, you would already have 46% of the search volume. So we can make a decision on which queries to use by the search volume. So for instance, in that example, and this also holds more or less for other queries as well, if we just use the top 10 queries by search volume, this would give us 63% of the total search volume. And if we used the top 20 queries, we would have more than 75% of the search volume. So what I would say is that in a study where we usually use, say, 50 or 100 queries, well, we can improve that by just ranking the queries by their search volume and using the ones that have the highest volume. So in summary, I think the big benefit of generating queries that way is that it's more realistic than hand-picked queries where we don't know whether people actually search for them. Limitation, of course, is we have data from Google only, and the system does not generate queries for all topics we might be interested in, but still it's worth trying out. I was quite surprised when we tested it that, well, for some queries where I didn't expect it, it generated suggestions, whereas for others we got none. Also, this extends what we do or what we intended with RED for other study types. So for instance, if you want to use the query sampler standalone, it might be a good idea to compare the search interest for particular queries or topics in different countries, say the United Kingdom versus the United States, for the same set of queries, because we also have the query volume, and interest might be different in the different countries. So I hope that clarified at least some of the questions that were already asked about how the query sets are generated, and of course I'm happy to take more questions. Thank you.